Contrary to vastly popular belief, Grey's Anatomy isn't exactly an accurate portrayal of life as a surgeon. Or is it? I mean, I imagine there's probably a lot less supply closet sex and staff members dying in freak plane crashes and definitely no outbreaks of the bubonic plague. But actually, what does a day in the life of a surgeon look like? What are the skills you should be concentrating on right now, whether you're a pre-med, medical student, or even a resident? How do you choose a specialty, and what's the best and worst part about being a surgeon? Well, these are all questions you'll likely have if you are preparing for a career in surgery. And so to answer them, we enlisted the firepower of Dr. Erik Pearson. He's a pediatric surgeon, a fellow of the American College of Surgeons, and the brains, brawn, and personality behind the website and YouTube channel, Citizen Surgeon. Well, this covers everything from basic medical knowledge right through to the clinical content of surgical subspecialties, which is super helpful for medical students interested in surgery, as well as surgical residents preparing for critically important exams. So without further ado, here's Dr. Erik Pearson, Citizen Surgeon, and what you can expect from a career as a surgeon. Okay, Dr. Pearson, how do you know whether becoming a surgeon is the right path for you?
All right, well, it's a great question. And I think when you're thinking about a career in surgery, I would say my first piece of advice is to try to ignore what you think your talents are and start to ask yourself some easy questions, because training to be a surgeon, it's not just medical school and residency and it's over. It's a lifelong process, a lifelong learning. All right. And so I think it's easier to identify and say, okay, well, do these questions resonate with me or not? And one of those is, do you like to see immediate results? All right. So are you the type of person that sees the problem and you like to see a rather immediate solution? Or are you somebody that can wait a while and be equally satisfied? All right. So a second question would be, do you excel at problem solving? And are you able to adapt and to think on your feet? In surgery, a lot of times we begin an operation with plan A, and early on, we might have to switch to plan B or plan C, or come up with a plan that we didn't have in the works yet. All right. So can you think on your feet? Do you enjoy working with your hands? Do you enjoy acquiring new technical skills as technology changes? Do you enjoy kind of learning new technology, the decades of surgeons doing open operations and then evolving into laparoscopic and now using robotics? So those are some kind of preliminary questions. And if you say yes to those things, then yeah, surgery is the right path. But I wouldn't narrow yourself down if you're thinking about what your talent set is. It's really, what are you curious about?
Right. So you start off with the fundamentals, like, am I compatible with the career in surgery? Well, on the subject of those skills, what are the hallmark traits of a good surgeon? Right.
And so again, I would say that remember that surgeons are trained, but there are physical, emotional, leadership traits. And, the physical traits are, first, are you dexterous? Do you enjoy working with your hands? And that could be for proceduralists or interventionalists, but also obviously for surgeons. We work with our hands every day. Also, physically, are you in good health? Do you have good stamina? Can you stand up for, the half the day, the full day, to keep on going? Physical health is really, really important. Then there's kind of emotional core traits. So are you calm under pressure? When pressure mounts, are you somebody that focuses, or are you somebody that folds? Do you enjoy being the person that has to make the last shot, or do you enjoy having that pressure put on you? And can you remain calm in those times of chaos? And then, communication. Can you lead a team? Can you control a room? Can you walk into a chaotic situation like a level 1 trauma or mass casualty incident and provide the leadership that everybody in that room needs to move forward and get a good outcome with that patient?
Mm-hmm. And I mean, so these would be great inherent skills and traits to have, but I imagine they're also honed over the years, with experience. You can become better.
Yeah, and I think that really starts early in medical school. Are you gravitated towards particular parts of the hospital? Do you enjoy being in the operating room? I mean, there's a kind of a joke that would say, well, if your favorite place in the hospital is the operating room, you should be an anesthesiologist. If your favorite place in the world is the operating room, you should be a surgeon, right? And but I think that there's a lot of truth to that, because if you don't like being in the operating room and you don't like that environment, then surgery is probably not for you.
Right.
When I was a medical student, I couldn't get enough of the operating room. I would just hang out in the OR lounge at night, and there were cases going on. I would just show up, and the surgeons were totally welcoming, and they'd just be like, "Hey, can I hang out and watch?"
Yeah.
And it was just where I liked to be, and a lot of my colleagues kind of felt the same way.
Awesome. All right. So tell me, what does a day in the life of a surgeon look like?
Every day is different. All right. Every day is exciting. I would say that, well, not every day is exciting, but I would say every day has its ounce of unpredictability. All right. And so that's one thing. I think if you're considering a career in surgery, you really have to embrace unpredictability. Most days will start out with a plan, but it can be minutes, hours into the day where the plan totally changes. And to give you kind of an idea, so for me, when I have clinic, yesterday was a clinic day. So I woke up, I have my miracle morning. So I have this kind of set of things that I go through every morning. I meditate, and I have exercise, I do reading, journaling. And then I usually, if it's a clinic day, I'm fortunate, I have 3 kids. I can take my kids to school. I show up to the hospital, I round with the residents, and usually by about 9:30, I'll head into clinic. I'll see 25 to 30 patients. I'm done around 3:30, 4 o'clock. And then sometimes I get to pick up my kids from school and go home, see my wife. And that would be like a very planned, nice day. Now, if I'm on call, then that same plan will be interrupted by consults, and probably get 5 to 7 consults in a particular 24-hour day. And then an operative day is a little different. So an operative day will start a little bit earlier. I usually wake up, I do my same miracle morning set, and get to the hospital about 7 o'clock for first patient. I'll have between 5 and 7 cases, and then that'll take me through the end of the day. And then, of course, that can get interrupted. Perhaps my partners need help with a case, or, maybe a baby needs to be cannulated for ECMO, or there's an emergency in the ER. And so any of those things can kind of trip up your plan. And so it's typical days are quite atypical, but they kind of follow a pattern, whether it's your clinic day or it's your operative day.
Right. Cool. All right. Well, now let's look at choosing a specialty. When making that decision, if that's something you want to do, is it quite hard? Is it a tough decision? Or do you find most students develop an affinity for a particular system or organ as they complete their residency, or even earlier?
Yeah, it's a really good question, right? Because I think every student that's going through medical school and goes into residency have to choose, right? And it's my opinion that I think the choice is easier for those people that engage, right? Because the more experiences you force yourself to have, the more opportunities you're going to give yourself to like something or to not like something, right? And, for me, choosing surgery came quite naturally because I really liked anatomy in the preclinical years, and I was good at it. I had, with those questions I was talking about, I really like immediate results. I do not like waiting. I love to be able to fix a problem, provide a mechanical solution. And then when it came to choose a subspecialty, it was engaging in the ped surgery world and getting to know those surgeons, and also engaging all the other ones. Like I found out, I really didn't enjoy transplant surgery. I didn't enjoy cardiac. I didn't enjoy vascular. There were things that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life doing, but I loved kids, and I loved the responsibility of being beholden to a child's health and their family. And, in pediatrics in a children's hospital, there's a lot of energy that you don't have in the adult world, and the clocks sort of fall off the walls. And, it's a demanding environment, but it's a fun environment. And so for me, that was attractive. So when you ask, is it hard? I think it's harder for people that don't engage, because they don't get those experiences of Do they like something or do they not like something?
Mhm.
And so I would say, yeah, it's easy if you engage and you
Right.
really listen to yourself and what you like, what you don't like.
Right. So just pay attention to yourself and then get out there, put yourself into those situations and experiment. Yeah.
Get out there. I mean, remember that the hospital is your textbook, right? They can give you all these bullet point lists, things to memorize, but at the end of the day, the hospital, the patients, that's where you get your experience. And that's where you'll answer that question. What do you want to spend the rest of your life doing?
Yeah. So what's the deal with general surgeons then? Do they just like everything and choose?
Yeah, I mean, it's so when I was considering specialties, I thought to myself, if you were to drop me out of a plane, what physician would have the skill set that could take care of everybody? And that's the thing I love about general surgery is that you are a really, really good physician who has this huge set of procedural skills. I mean, a general surgeon can take care of somebody with heart failure, can take somebody with some diabetes, they can take care of medical problems, but they can also open a chest, they get vascular access, they can be in the abdomen. I mean, a general surgeon can do almost anything. Now, the present day general surgeons are getting more specialized. So within general surgery, you have colorectal surgery, endocrine surgery, vascular surgery, cardiac, thoracic surgery, and even within those, they're starting to compartmentalize. In pediatric surgery, we are a very general specialty. So pediatric surgery is 2 years of training after general. And in my typical day, I'll take care of an 800-gram neonate, and I'll take care of a 17-year-old with pilonidal disease or a 10-year-old with an appendicitis. So not only do I get a huge range in age and in size, but also a huge range in pathology. So pediatric surgery as a general specialty, as far as the spectrum you get to take care of, is probably where general surgery was for adults 20 years ago.
Right. So if you like lucky packets, become a general surgeon.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. So now, is there anything medical students can do right now as they complete medical school to prepare for a career in surgery that might put them ahead of their peers?
It's a good question. And if the biggest thing that I can recommend is kind of two things. You want to prepare yourself first with your knowledge base. So remember that as a medical student, especially in your fourth year, you kind of taken your foot off the gas a little bit. You've matched, you know where you're going, the rotations aren't as hard, and the demands aren't as big, right? And so now is the time where you should really work on building your habits, because you're going to rely on those habits when you're a tired, overworked, and surgical intern, right? And so right now, I'd recommend reading the book Atomic Habits by James Clear if you need, some habit forming tips, okay? And one of those is to get in the habit of reading. If you could pick one of the major textbooks of your choice, and just start reading it 5 minutes a day. You can gradually increase that, but if you can build that habit that you wake up at 4:35 in the morning and you spend 5-10 minutes every single day without fail reading, and you develop that habit, you will rely on that habit as a surgical intern. You will not have to figure out when you're going to build that reading time. It'll already be in your schedule. And so that's the one thing, is build those habits. And then the other is, one thing that a lot of medical students and even junior surgery residents wait for is the opportunity to sew in the operating room to get better at their technical skills. It's my opinion that you should be extremely proficient at tying knots and sewing in a straight line and being gentle with tissue before you get to the operating room with me or another surgeon. And so you want to be able to do two-handed knots. You want to be able to do one-handed knots. You want to be able to hold the instruments right. And if that means going and getting some suture from your medical school and sewing on bananas, and tying down on bananas and not breaking the skin, but just being gentle, grab some, 3/0 silk suture and just practice sewing. So when you get in the operating room and the surgeon says, "Hey, help me close the skin," you don't look like you're doing it for the first time.
Yeah.
And that's really important. So those two things, build reading habits, and then build up your dexterity with the very, very simple procedural technique. And you'll find yourself leaps and bounds ahead of your peers.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. Ingraining those habits, because you're going to be so chaotic and busy. The last thing you want to do is to try and drill sergeant yourself into the habits you need to get by. Yeah.
And you'll be overwhelmed, because at that time, when you graduate medical school, you are a doctor and people are depending on you. And that's another burden of stress that you go to sleep at night with. And so just like you're saying, if you have these habits built, you can rely on.
Yeah, right. All right. So the same question, but now for medical residents, what can they do to better equip themselves for a career in surgery, both from an educational, mental, or even physical standpoint?
Yeah, number one is for a surgical resident, you want to be in the operating room as much as possible. A lot of the feedback that we get to give to junior residents is, hey, why were you out on the floor? Why did you miss that case? Don't miss a case. Don't miss any case. You will learn the most from cases that you will say that are easy. Like, for example, a laparoscopic appendectomy. I'll do a couple of those almost every day.
Oh, wow.
And with the residents, those are awesome opportunities to learn how to use both hands, to learn how to, put yourself in the right position, how to choose trocar placements, how to approach pathology, how to handle tissues, how to do all these things. And you might just say, oh, it's just an appy. You got to get rid of that word just. Every case is a patient. Every case is an opportunity to get better. In those easier, less stressful cases, you'll have more room to improve than you will on the more quote unquote exciting, complex cases.
Yeah.
And so that's one. And then two, I would say, is build your network. And everybody that you meet, whether it's at your institution, or I recommend doing sub-Is at other institutions, so you can see other systems, other residents, other surgeons, other practice environments, whether it's urban, rural, whether it's academic, community, and then keep in touch with that network. You might be reaching out to them for a job someday. You might be reaching out to them, on the behalf of another colleague of yours. And so go to conferences, build your network, introduce yourself with people, get engaged, join the American College of Surgeons, get on the Young Fellows Association, get involved in their committees, because, you start to get in these smaller and smaller communities, and you can make a huge impact on your local community by being involved at regional and national level. Yeah. And so I'd say those are the two things: engage, don't miss a case, and then start to build your network.
Yeah.
And then three would be stay in good health and build those habits too, because, you can, and the residency is very stressful in almost every way, physical, emotional, relationships. Yeah. And I keep going back to this, but you'll rely on your habits, whether they're good or bad, and they'll carry you through. And that might mean, poor mental and emotional health, or poor physical health, or it could mean the opposite of that. It could mean that you stay in really good physical, emotional, mental health because you have good habits.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so tell me, what sucks about being a surgeon? Is it being asked to diagnose weird rashes at parties when someone finds out what you do?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, when you graduate, some magic thing happens. When you graduate fellowship, all of a sudden, everybody in your neighborhood starts calling you about every kind of a bump, cut, scrape, bruise, rash, everything, right? Yeah. But that's fun, right? That's not a bad thing. It's fun to be able to provide those answers. Now, I'm a pediatric surgeon, so if one of my neighbors comes to me with a rash, I can point them in the right direction, but I can't diagnose and treat, unless it's poison ivy or something.
Oh yeah.
But there's the obvious thing. The worst thing about being a surgeon is that, death is real. When the times that I've lost a child and I've told the parent that their child is gone, I can remember every single one of those encounters. And I'm a young surgeon. Unfortunately, it happens very, very infrequently, but that's an unimaginable experience.
Yeah.
If you've not broken that kind of news. So breaking bad news is tough, whether that is the loss of a child or a baby, whether that is telling a patient that, the biopsy that we took that we didn't expect to be cancer is. And now what's the future of that child's life look like? And so those, if you say like on the spectrum of like easy to hard, what's the hardest? That's the hardest because it's so real. And being a surgeon, you're right there. And failure is very, very real. It's right in front of you. It's happening. But then like, how about on the day-to-day, what kind of sucks, right? The unpredictability, I think, is the most difficult part, because maybe my daughter Charlotte has a gymnastics meet and I plan to go at 4:00, and then at 3:30 I get a call that somebody needs my help, and I have to explain to my 7-year-old that I'm not going to be there. Daddy has to go help somebody, but she doesn't necessarily understand that disappointment, and so that's difficult, because when things are very predictable, it's easy to make everybody happy. And when things are unpredictable, it's easy, whether it's relationships with your husband or your wife, your partner, or your kids, that unpredictability kind of breeds disappointment. So I would say, like, what kind of sucks? That sucks. You're in the business of unpredictability.
Right.
And that's the difficult day to day.
It makes it hard to show up for the people in your life when your own work life is so unpredictable.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, then what's your favorite thing about being a surgeon?
My favorite thing about being a surgeon is, the best thing is that for me as a pediatric surgeon is I take a sick child and a worried family. A lot of times if it's a baby, that's the first time that baby's been out of mom's arms, and I'm taking them into the operating room. And I'm telling the parents that I'm going to solve this problem for you, and you don't have to be worried anymore. And then I get to bring that child back and give that baby or that child to mom and dad and say, you're fixed. You don't have to worry. Right. And so for me, like, there's no greater privilege, no greater responsibility, I think, than what I get to do every day. Yeah. And so it's really magical. Like it's, you almost get choked up thinking about, the hundreds of families that I've been involved with, and this privilege I worked really hard for, but every day you get that experience. And so that's the best part. It's just awesome. You get a taste of it as a medical student when you get that satisfaction and seeing a patient get better. You get a bigger taste as a resident and a fellow, but really when you're the attending surgeon and you've made a decision and you take a child to the operating room to bring them back, like that, there's no greater feeling.
I can barely comprehend it. It must be incredible.
Yeah.
So high. Yeah. All right. So finally, will you tell us how your website and YouTube channel, Citizen Surgeon, helps medical students and residents become as great as a surgeon as you?
Well, I'm striving, lifelong improvement. Thanks for asking. It's one of the frustrations I had when I was a medical student or resident was, how could I find a free resource where I could learn high quality material? And I think that those resources are lacking, and the resources that are out there weren't that good. They weren't that high quality, or they're delivered by people or institutions that weren't really engaged in providing some like super high quality from experience for surgical education. And so my goal is to scale surgical education. And I love the ability of YouTube or the internet to be able to deliver that. I get comments from people that have watched some of the videos from, South America or Kenya, throughout Africa, all over Europe, and of course the States, Philippines, and people are like, hey, we don't have access to anything like this. This is so great. And that gives me a lot of motivation. So, my goal is to scale surgical education And then on the website is to provide, a resource for things in and out of the operating room, whether that's how to avoid burnout or how to study, or, maybe how to find a job, or what does it mean to have grit? How does grit relate to being happy? How to have a fulfilling career. So, I try to play around with a lot of these different concepts. And then right now we're kind of building this community on a Circle platform where instead of me just kind of delivering information, we can all engage with each other. And so I'm trying to attract people. It's totally free resource. And so if, people are watching this, they're interested, you can check out citizensurgeon.com. Got a little newsletter I send out every Saturday, and it can be part of the community. It's exciting.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Pearson, for speaking to me today and for providing such great resources for medical students, pre-meds, med students, and residents out there. We much appreciate your time.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
So there you have it, what you can expect from surgery as a career, although no doubt this is just the tip of the iceberg. You see, every career, specialty, and even clinical environment offers totally unique experiences and challenges. What is the same across the board is the mastery of the skills, education, and training you need to work safely, efficiently, and successfully, both in and outside the operating theatre. Armed with this intel, I hope you feel a lot more excited and prepared for a career as a surgeon, which, whichever way you cut it, is a life-changing occupation. If you are preparing to take on the MCAT, make sure you get Brainscape certified MCAT flashcards in your corner. We have distilled down and organized the science content you need to know into an awesome collection of smart flashcards, which are proven to help you learn and remember content twice as fast as traditional study methods. Armed with these, you'll keep up that healthy cadence of daily review that is so essential for landing high scores on the MCAT. And for even more guidance, check out the other videos we have on Brainscape's medical channel, including more interviews like this one. And go to our MCAT Academy for free study guides on everything you need to know to prepare for and ace the MCAT. These tools, together with your ambition and hard work, is everything you need to rise to your challenge.